You know, in Pinocchio, that's why Pinocchio is a puppet, right? Something's pulling his strings. He's a marionette. And the things that are pulling his strings, well, they might have his best interests in mind, but they might not too. And so that's what Pinocchio is about, actually. And it's also about how not to be a mannequin. Turns out that you have to go to the bottom of the ocean and find your father in a whale and then drown. That's how you stop from being a puppet. It's like, and you think, well, you don't believe that. And I would say, well, yes, you do. You went and watched the movie, and you enjoyed it. Not only that, you understood it, even though you don't have any idea what it's about. And also, on the face of it, it's absolutely absurd. It's like, it's not a puppet first, it's a drawing of a puppet. So that's weird, that's 2 levels of weird, and then like, what the hell's with the cricket? Where'd he come from? You know, and what's his role, and why is he the conscience? And why does he get like activated by a fairy? And why is the fairy a star? It's like you're in there, you know, like Cletus the slack-jawed yokel, watching the screen, captivated by it. And you know, you walk out and you don't even notice that you're so peculiar that it's just beyond belief. You don't even notice that that's so peculiar. It's like, what the hell are you doing in that theater? Watching this marionette follow a bug around to a whale. It's like you walk out, oh, that was so touching. Really, like really, people are really crazy, you know, and weird. Like we're like rhinoceroses or platypuses or ostriches or penguins. We're weird right to the core. And when you start to, the weirdness is so deep and so ancient that even starting to touch consciousness of that just rocks your boat. So, but one thing or another will rock your boat. So sometimes it's nice to choose what thing it is. It prepares you for things too. So I'll tell you part of what Pinocchio means. Pinocchio is a marionette. Anybody can pull his strings. I mean, he's got a good heart, but what's that worth? Nothing. Virtually nothing. Because he's naive. You know, you can manipulate. It's the fox and the, what is it, that stupid cat that manipulate him, right? And basically, behind them you'll see the devil, because that devil pops out quite quickly in Pinocchio. And he's the thing that's behind all the local manifestations of evil that are trying to pull Pinocchio's strings. And he gets blown off the right path pretty badly. Almost turns into an unconsciously braying donkey who ends up working in the slave mines, which is exactly what happens, by the way, you know, that's what happened to devout communists who found themselves swallowed up by Stalin's nightmare in the 1940s and the 1950s. It's like, well, we were so good. We did everything you wanted. It's like, yeah, well, it turned out what we wanted is for you to die painfully. So, you know, congratulations. So, you know, and that's brilliantly laid out in Pinocchio, which in fact was written in the 1930s. Brilliantly laid out. It's a way more intelligent analysis of the 1930s than anything that you'll ever find that was written. So, Pinocchio, you know, he's trying to hew the proper path, and he learns that he shouldn't lie. That's a what do you call, archetypal idea. I can tell you why that is later. And it turns out that in order to get out of the horrible mess that he's put himself in, partly by being a slavish adherent to like momentary pleasure and nihilism, you know, he ends up half a jackass who can't speak properly without braying, so that makes him an ideologue. And the only way that he can get out of that is to go down to the bottom of the ocean, as deep as he can possibly go, deeper than anything is willing to go, to find his father. What's his father? His father is the culture that he lost touch with. You know, and to the degree that you guys are lost, like all human beings are lost, the reason you're lost is because you've never rescued your father from the bottom of the ocean. You haven't gone deep enough. You won't have even known it was necessary. It's necessary. You're a social, historical, cultural creature, right down to where you become a biological creature. And if that isn't part of you, and if that part isn't functioning properly, then you can just be blown off course by the wind. There's nothing to you. You're not grounded in anything. That's partly why the shaman, when they go down, communicate with their ancestors. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to pull up the cultural understructure of their societies up into consciousness to make use of it. And you constantly have to have a dialogue with that, because a lot of the lines of you know, the culture that you're embedded in was written down by people several thousand years ago. It's like, it's not easy to figure out what the hell those people were talking about or why it's relevant to you. So there has to be a dialogue continually going on between the present and the past, so that you can bring the wisdom forward without losing what's in it. Because if you lose what's in it, it's like, you're just nowhere. By which I mean any ideology. Because they're all false idols and false gods. And they're shallow. They're shallow and deadly. And they ruin your life. They destroy your soul. So that's just a catastrophic response. And that's why it's so terrible to have that discordance between your instinctual being, your deep instinctual being, and your little fragile, half-witted conscious mind that sort of thinks it's in control. It's like, you're not in control of anything. Believe me. Best you can do is follow what's right. That's the best you can do. We even know this neurologically to some degree. Like, if you look at the hypothalamus, it's a little part of the brain. We'll talk about it quite a bit. It's sort of where the Freudian id resides, to the degree that it resides anywhere. It's this collection of nuclei that do things like make you hungry or make you thirsty or make you, sexually desirous or make you defensively aggressive or make you terrified of an intruder who threatens your dominant status. It's this little tiny part of your brain. It's hardly even there at all. It has massive projections coming up into the cortex. And then there's little tendrils going down to regulate it. And so basically, as long as everything is pretty much perfect, your conscious mind is in control. But as soon as things deviate from the path to any degree whatsoever, the really smart parts of your brain take over. And then you do what they tell you to do, or you suffer the consequences. And whatever they thought of themselves, the themselves that was supposed to be in control, that bloody thing is like, it's like a wagon with a child in it being towed behind an elephant. It's got no control at all. So you have to, one of the things that's terrifying about Jung is that there's no escaping the realization of the nature of the forces that are behind the puppets that we are.